Sometimes I think life isn't made of the choices we make, but of the things we run from. We leave towns. We leave people. We leave truth. We leave ourselves. I left Harmontown the day my father died, and I came back 8 years later, when Mom did that. I wasn't planning to stay, but the past, it waits for you. Especially the parts you tried hardest to escape. My name's Jake Harper. I'm 27, and I'm standing again in front of the house I swore I'd never come back to. Smells like pine and damp wood. The air sticks to my skin, the old number sign creaks in the wind. 2-story white house, paint peeling like it's been scraped by time. This is where I grew up, where I kissed a girl for the first time, where I lied, where I once said out loud, I'll never be like him. But I became him anyway. I drove here in the same pickup I bought when I started working in a garage down in Jacksonville. It creaks too, but it still moves. Like me. I in the back, a suitcase, a beat-up guitar, and some unopened letters from my mom, letters I should have read a long time ago. So you did come back, a voice behind me said. I turned. Rebecca, 8th grade. Spring dance. My first kiss. Now she wore glasses, her hair was shorter, but her eyes, still the same. Deep and calm like Lake Cressy at 6 a.m., Becky, I nodded. Didn't expect to see you. Small town, she said. Bad news travels fast. Especially this kind. She looked at the door. Then at me. Are you staying? I looked up at the sky. It was gray, just like that day, all those years ago, heavy. Silent, and I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. She turned and walked off down the sidewalk. I watched her until she disappeared past the bend. Her shoulders were a little straighter now, her walk more grounded, but she still moved like the same girl I used to pass notes to in freshman English, and just like that, she was gone. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and turned back toward the front door. The key Mom used to leave under the flower pot was still there, same old rusted brass thing with the chipped blue nail polish on it. She used to paint it like that so I couldn't lose it, as if color ever stopped a 16-year-old from screwing up. I turned the lock. The door groaned open like it hadn't moved in weeks. It smelled like old wood, lemon cleaner, and something faint underneath, something tired. I stepped inside, and the past rushed at me like a train. Same tan couch, though more sun-faded now. Same coffee table, scratched with 100 old stories. The photo frames were still on the mantel, me as a toddler in overalls, Dad in his police uniform, Mom smiling like she was still full of hope. It felt wrong, standing in that living room alone, too quiet. Too still, like the house was waiting for something, or someone, to bring it back to life. I dropped my suitcase near the stairs and walked through to the kitchen. The fridge was unplugged. Dishes were gone. The notes on the fridge still there, yellowed post-its with scribbled grocery lists in Mom's handwriting: eggs, milk, bread, toothpaste. Like she meant to go to the store tomorrow, like she never thought tomorrow would run out. I found a half-empty pack of matches in the drawer and lit one, just to smell the sulfur. It's a weird thing, but sometimes I do that, light a match and blow it out right away. I don't know why. Maybe just to feel like I'm still in control of something. I leaned on the counter and looked around. How long had it been since I actually let myself feel anything in this house? 8 years, more. The last real conversation I had here ended with a slammed door, a busted knuckle, and my dad yelling something I'll never forget: you either grow up, or you end up like your Uncle Mike, dead in a ditch blaming everybody else. I left the next morning. Took Mom's old car and never looked back. Now she was gone, and I was back. I walked upstairs to my old bedroom. The door still had the sticker I'd slapped on it when I was 13, keep out, unless you're bringing pizza. It made me smile a little. Inside, everything was frozen. The posters were still on the wall: Nirvana, The Offspring, a crooked one of the Lakers from 2004. My old bed was made. Probably Mom's doing. The smell of dust and cologne that had faded into the walls. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. That's when I remembered the box, top of the closet, blue shoebox, duct taped shut, full of notes, drawings, dumb memories, and one letter I wrote to myself when I was 18. I pulled it down, the tape peeled like skin. Inside, a photo of me and Rebecca at the lake. A guitar pick. A receipt from the diner where I worked one summer. And the letter. To Jake Harper, read only if you ever come back. I stared at it, then I set it aside. Not yet. By noon the next day, I realized something strange. I was hungry, not just for food, but for noise. For voices. For people. The house felt like a museum of memories. Every corner whispered something I wasn't ready to hear. So I grabbed my keys and headed downtown. Harmontown wasn't big. Just a few stoplights, a main street, a few bars, 2 gas stations, and the diner. Maddie's Diner, same neon sign blinking with 1 dead bulb, same smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee that somehow made the place feel safe. I stepped inside, the bell over the door jingled, and a few heads turned. A guy in a Carhartt jacket gave me a quick glance, then looked away. 2 old ladies in the booth by the window kept talking like they hadn't noticed, but Maddie did. "Oh my God," she said, dropping a tray mid-walk. "Jake freaking Harper." I smiled. "Hey, Mads." She ran around the counter and pulled me into a tight hug. Maddie was 5'0", all sass and silver hoop earrings. She'd run that place since her dad passed it down, and by now, she was more Harmontown than the mayor himself. "I thought you were dead," she said, pulling back. "Or famous. You look like you've been living out of that truck." "Both are kinda true." She slapped my arm. "Still a smartass, I see. Some things never change." She looked me over again, this time softer. "I'm sorry about your mom. She was one of the good ones." "Yeah," I said, the word dry in my mouth. "She really was." She nodded toward a booth. "Go sit. I'll bring you a menu, even though I know you're still a pancakes and black coffee guy." I laughed under my breath. Small towns, no one forgets your breakfast order. I slid into the corner booth, the same one where I'd sat every Saturday with my mom when I was a kid. The vinyl squeaked under me. Out the window, I could see the church steps, the hardware store, and the empty lot where the old movie theater used to be. Then someone slid into the booth across from me. "Jesus. It really is you." I looked up, and blinked. Eli Stokes. He'd gained maybe 20 pounds, had a beard now, and wore a mechanic's shirt with his name stitched over the chest, but that grin. "Same as it ever was." "Eli," I said, surprised. "Damn." He slapped the table. "You ghosted harder than my dad, man. Where the hell you been?" "Jacksonville. Then Birmingham. Then back to Jacksonville. Kinda floated around." "You still playing guitar?" "A little," I said. "Mostly just for myself these days." Maddie dropped off coffee for both of us, gave Eli a warning look, "Don't start any trouble, Stokes," and disappeared into the kitchen. "So what, man?" Eli asked. "You just passing through, or?" "I don't know yet." He nodded slowly. "Heard about your mom." "Sorry, man." "Thanks." He sipped his coffee. "You see Rebecca yet?" I blinked. "Yeah. Yesterday." He grinned. "Man. That girl. She waited for you longer than she should have." "I didn't ask her to." "No. But you didn't ask her to stop, either." That one landed hard. That I leaned back, looked around the diner. "I wasn't ready," I said. "Back then. I didn't know how to stay without turning into him." Eli's face changed. He knew who I meant. "You're not your dad, Jake. Tell that to the mirror some mornings." He drummed his fingers on the table. "You coming by the garage later? Place looks different now. I got 2 kids and a mortgage. You'll love how boring I turned out." I smirked. "Maybe." He looked at me more seriously. "We all changed, man. Town too. Not everything's the same. Does it ever feel like home again?" He didn't answer right away. "Then, only when you stop running." After Eli left, I stayed in the booth a while longer. Ordered pancakes. Ate half of them. The diner buzzed around me, refilled coffee, clinking silverware, low voices and laughter, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I hadn't disappeared completely. Maybe I'd just gone quiet for a while, and now the silence was starting to break. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again, that it wasn't the creaking house this time, or the wind pressing against the windows like it wanted it was the memory, the one I kept locked up behind every excuse I'd ever made. So I got out of bed, barefoot, walked downstairs, and poured a glass of water. The kitchen light flickered when I flipped the switch, same as always, and then I sat at the kitchen table, just like I did the night my whole life changed. It was a Thursday, hot, sticky August, the night my dad hit me for the last time. That he didn't punch me, that wasn't his style, that he used words. Heavy ones. Sharp, and that night, they hit harder than any fist ever could. He'd been drinking, surprise, and Mom was hiding in the bedroom again. That I came home late. Smelled like weed and lake water, typical 17-year-old crap. He was waiting in the living room. TV off. Belt in hand, not to use, just to hold. Power move. You think life owes you something, Jake? You think just 'cause you hate me, you get to be nothing? I didn't answer. He stood up slow, eyes glazed. You keep living like this, you're gonna end up a washed-up loser with a guitar and a record full of DUIs. I said something then. I don't remember what, probably smartass, probably true. He stepped closer. Real close, and then he said the thing I've never been able to forget: you're weak. Just like your mother. And when I'm gone, you'll blame the world for what you never had the balls to change. I snapped. I shoved him, hard. He didn't fall, but he stumbled. For 1 second, we both froze, stunned, then he laughed, that sick, low laugh he used when he wanted to remind you who he was, and I walked out the door. Didn't even take shoes. Just keys, wallet, my guitar. Didn't look back. Didn't come home. Now, sitting in that same kitchen, I tried to remember how I felt that night. Angry. Sure, but mostly, freed. Or so I thought. What I really was broken, and I've been running on that broken leg ever since. The next morning, I found Rebecca waiting on the porch. She had coffee again, same as before. You always bring coffee when you show up uninvited. I asked, opening the door. Only to people I used to love, she said, straight-faced. That word, used, caught me off guard. She walked in like she never stopped knowing the layout, sat at the same stool at the kitchen island she used to claim every time we skipped school. You're quiet, she said. I'm always quiet. No, she said. You used to listen quietly. Now you just carry silence like armor. I leaned on the counter, watching her sip. You ever think about that night? I asked. Her gaze lifted slowly. Which one? The last one. Before I left. She set the cup down. Every once in a while. Not like I used to. Why not? Because I got tired of writing a story that never had an ending. I walked over, sat across from her. I owe you something, Becky. No, she said quickly. You don't. You really don't. Yes, I do. I left without a word. I just disappeared. You were 17, Jake. We were kids. You were drowning, and I wasn't strong enough to pull you out. I know that now. You were the only thing keeping me sane. I didn't feel like it. Silence. Then I said something I hadn't said to anyone, not even myself. I was afraid I'd hurt you. That I'd become him. Rebecca blinked, and I saw something behind her eyes shift. Maybe pain. Maybe understanding. Jake, she said softly. You're not your father. You don't know that. I know you. Not anymore. I want to. Those 3 words, they didn't ask for anything, but they cracked something open inside me. We sat there for another hour. Talking about nothing. Laughing about stupid things, her new cat that hated her, my truck that stalled every time it rained, but beneath it all was something real, not love, not yet, but something that still remembered love, and maybe, for now, that was enough. After Rebecca left, I spent most of the afternoon pacing the house. Every doorway felt like it had something to say, every floorboard creaked under a memory. That I finally stopped in the living room, staring at the box I'd pulled down from my closet, the blue shoebox. I'd left it on the coffee table, unopened, because the truth is, no matter how old you get, you still believe in monsters hiding in old boxes. I sat on the couch and pulled it into my lap. This time, I didn't hesitate. I flipped the lid back. The photo of me and Rebecca at Lake Cressy was right on top. We couldn't have been older than 16. My hair too long, Hers in that messy braid she used to do when she was nervous that we were smiling so wide you'd think we'd never learn to be sad that I set it aside. Underneath, there were a few old ticket stubs, concerts, movies, a rodeo we'd gone to for no reason except it was something to do. A guitar pick I'd borrowed from Eli and never gave back, and a letter in my mother's handwriting. This one wasn't in an envelope. Just folded in half that I'd never seen it before. I took a breath and opened it. Jake, if you're reading this, I guess you finally came home. I hope you found peace out there. I hope you know I never blamed you for leaving, but there's something I need you to know, and I never could say it to your face. The night you left, your father and I fought. Worse than ever. He said things he couldn't take back. So did I. When he died a year later, I wanted to tell you everything. But you were so far away, and I was so tired that I don't expect you to forgive him. Or me, but you deserve to know, you weren't the reason he drank. You weren't the reason he hurt us, and you weren't the reason he's gone. I'm sorry I let you believe that. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. Love you forever, Mom. I sat back, the paper trembling in my hands. I'd spent almost a decade telling myself that if I hadn't pushed him, if I hadn't left, maybe he would have gotten better. Or at least not gotten worse, and here she was, in her shaky cursive, telling me I'd been wrong. But the thing about guilt is, even when the truth shows up, it doesn't pack up and leave. It lingers, because sometimes guilt feels safer than forgiveness. I folded the letter carefully, set it aside, then I did what I hadn't done since I was a kid. I closed my eyes, pressed my palms together, and whispered the shortest prayer I knew, just, help me. I didn't know who I was talking to, God, Mom, the quiet part of myself I'd buried. It didn't matter. The doorbell rang, sharp enough to cut through. The moment that I opened the door, and my stomach dropped. Standing there was someone I never expected, or wanted, to see. Tyler Grant. He looked older. Hairline receding, beard rough. He wore a cheap suit and held a manila folder under one arm. I hadn't seen him since my father's funeral. Jake, he said, voice cautious. Tyler. Can I come in? What for? I'm the executor of your mom's estate, he said. There's some paperwork. Couldn't you mail it? Could've, he admitted. But I wanted to see how you were. I stepped aside, reluctantly. He walked in, looking around like he expected the house to bite him. You look good, he lied. You don't. He smiled weakly. Fair. We sat at the kitchen table. He slid the folder toward me. Mostly just forms, he said. Her life insurance. The deed transfer. That sort of thing. I didn't touch it. Instead, I looked him straight in the eye. Why are you really here? He swallowed. Looked at the counter. When he finally met my gaze again, there was something there I hadn't seen in years. Regret, because I should have been a better friend, he said quietly. Back then. You were Dad's friend, I reminded him. I was yours, too. Once. I didn't answer. He cleared his throat. She told me, you know. Before she passed. That you'd come back. That you'd need someone. I don't, I said flatly. He nodded, accepting that. If you change your mind, he said, standing, I'm around. He walked to the door. Just before he stepped out, he looked back. He loved you, he said. In his own way. I didn't watch him leave. I sat there a long time after the door closed. The folder sat between my elbows, daring me to open it, but I couldn't, not yet. The next morning, the sky was gray, not stormy, just heavy, like the world hadn't decided yet whether to cry or not. I sat at the kitchen table, the folder from Tyler still unopened in front of me, coffee going cold beside it. The silence in the house was different now. Less haunted, more waiting. Eventually, I flipped the clasp open and pulled out the papers. Most of it was exactly what he said, forms, transfers, legal language I barely understood. But at the back, tucked behind the will, was a handwritten note in a sealed envelope. To be given to Jake Harper only, from Margaret Harper. I opened it. Jake, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, and I'm sorry for that. There's one more truth I never told you. And I hate that you're hearing it like this. You have a sister, her name is Callie. She's 26 now. Lives in North Carolina. Your father had her before we met. He never told me until she was a teenager, and I never told you because, well, honestly, I was ashamed of how I reacted. But before I passed, she reached out. She said she wanted to connect with you. I'm leaving her contact info with Tyler. He promised to pass it along. You don't owe her anything, Jake. But you deserve the chance to decide for yourself. Love you always, Mom. I read the letter 3 times before I put it down. A sister, a whole person out there, walking around with pieces of my blood, pieces of my father, maybe pieces of the same anger I carried. It felt surreal. Like a plot twist in someone else's life. And then, beneath all that disbelief, I felt something stranger, a kind of ache, because as angry as I'd been at Dad for all the things he was, the drunk nights, the cold silences, the shouting matches, I never imagined there were pieces of him hidden away in other lives. Quiet ones. Whole ones. That I stood up, paced the kitchen. What did it even mean? That my mom had known, and kept it from me? That my dad had a daughter he'd never mentioned, never visited, or maybe did, in secret, and now she wanted to meet me? It was too much. So, I did the only thing that made sense in that moment. That I got in my truck and drove. I ended up outside the old community center. Half the sign was missing, the paint peeling. But the place was still running. I could hear kids laughing inside. That I parked and sat in the cab for a minute before getting out. That I didn't come here for nostalgia. That I came here for Eli. That he'd been volunteering here for years, even before I left town. Said it helped keep his head on straight. That I found him inside, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a group of third graders, building a tower out of foam blocks. Don't you knock anymore, he said without looking up. You saw me coming. Windows are a gift, he smirked. The kids groaned as the tower collapsed. Guess I'm cursed now, I muttered. Cursed and in need of coffee, he said, standing and dusting off his jeans. Come on. We sat on the back steps with paper cups from the center's old vending machine. Got a dead mom letter, I said, handing it to him. He read in silence, then looked up. Damn. Yeah. Callie. You gonna reach out? I shrugged. I don't know what I'd even say. He sipped his coffee. You ever think, he said slowly, that your dad might have tried to be better, and just didn't know how? I thought about that every damn day, I admitted. And it never made it hurt any less. We sat in silence a while. Eli finally said, you know, people don't have to earn forgiveness. Sometimes you just give it so you can breathe again. I didn't answer. That night, I sat on the hood of my truck outside the lake, same lake from the photo in the box. Same dock. Same moonlight rippling on the water. I pulled out my phone, typed the number, Callie Harper. The line rang twice, then 3 times, then a voice answered, soft. Unsure. Hello. I didn't speak. She said it again. Hello. Then, Jake. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and said, yeah. It's me. Yeah. It's me. The silence on the other end of the line lasted just long enough to make me wonder if she'd hung up. Then, Jake. Her voice was light, a little raspy, not unlike mine. Cautious, but curious. Yeah, I said again. I got the letter. Another pause. Then a soft laugh. I wondered if you'd actually call. I didn't know what to say to that. I hadn't even known she existed for 48 hours. Sorry, I said. I just didn't know where to start. I get it, she said. Believe me. I've had years to think about this, and I still don't know what to say. There was something familiar in her tone, like we were both stepping into a room we didn't know how to stand in. Where are you? I asked. Raleigh, North Carolina. I work at a nonprofit. Mostly fundraising and grant writing. Is that like a good thing? She laughed. I guess that depends on your opinion of long meetings and low pay. I smiled in spite of myself. So, she said, do you want to talk now? Or maybe, sometime later. I leaned back against the truck and looked at the sky. It was dark now. The lake calm. I can talk now. We didn't dive in, not at first. Just surface level stuff. Work. Music. The weather. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. What was he like? And just like that, I felt everything in my chest harden. That I didn't know how to talk about our father, my father, without painting him in shades of anger, fear, and whiskey. That I took a breath. Not great. She didn't respond. Actually, I added, he was hard. Cold. He drank a lot. And he said things that stuck in your skin like glass. I'm sorry, she said quietly. What about you? I asked. She hesitated. I only met him once. What? Yeah. I was 14. He showed up one day out of nowhere. My mom didn't even tell me he was coming. How was it? Weird. He was polite. Stiff. He brought me a book about songwriting. I didn't even play an instrument. Sounds like him. He asked if I was okay. If I liked school. Then he left after an hour. Never came back. I shook my head. Guess that was his style. Show up, say just enough to pretend it meant something, then disappear. Did he ever talk about me? Never. She didn't sound surprised that I heard her exhale slowly. Sometimes I wondered if I imagined him. You didn't, I said. But I wish you had. We talked for another hour. By the end, it wasn't exactly warm, but it wasn't cold either. It felt possible. Before we hung up, I asked, why now? I guess. I wanted to know if I was alone in this. You're not. She paused. Thanks, Jake. Yeah. We hung up, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel completely hollow after a phone call about my father. The next day, I saw Rebecca again. She brought sandwiches this time. Turkey and provolone, like she used to pack for me when I was broke and pretending I wasn't. That we ate on the back porch, watching the clouds roll in. I talked to my sister, I said. Rebecca blinked. You have a sister? Apparently. She let out a low whistle. You gonna meet her? I think so. That's big. I nodded. It is. We sat in silence for a bit, then she turned to me. Jake, do you ever feel like you're still trying to survive something that already happened? I looked at her, surprised. Every day, I said. She nodded. Same. There was a look in her eyes, like she wanted to say more. Maybe about her own ghosts, but she didn't. Instead, she reached out and took my hand, just held it, and in that moment, I realized something strange, that maybe healing doesn't come all at once, maybe it comes like this. One call. One sandwich. One held hand at a time. 3 days passed before I saw Rebecca again. That we didn't plan it. It just happened, like it always used to. I was walking out of the hardware store, a bag of screws and sandpaper in one hand, when I saw her parked out front in her old Jeep, window down, sunglasses halfway down her nose. Hey, stranger, she said. Twice in 1 week, I replied. Starting to feel like fate. Or a small town. I smirked. Same thing. She leaned on the steering wheel. Want to go for a drive? We ended up out on the edge of town, near the old fairgrounds. The place had been closed down for years, but the skeleton of the Ferris wheel still stood like a monument to better days. That we parked and climbed into the bleachers by the empty field. The late afternoon sun was gold and quiet. She sat beside me, picking at the frayed hem of her shorts. You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't left? She asked. That I looked over at her. All the time. She turned to me. I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had to. I know. No, I don't think you do, she said. I left because I was pregnant. My whole body went still. What? She nodded slowly. I didn't even find out until after I got to Asheville. I was scared. Alone. My mom was sick, and I didn't think I could handle it all. What happened? I lost the baby. I didn't know what to say. She kept going. I wanted to tell you. 1,000 times. But every time I thought about calling, it just felt too late. I stared at the grass below us. My heart felt like it was being slowly crushed. Becca, I whispered. I'm not saying it to get pity, she said quickly. I wanted you to know. Because that was part of what broke us. The part we never talked about. I didn't even know we were broken. She smiled sadly. Neither did I. Until I was already gone. We sat there in silence for a long time, the sun dipped behind the trees, and shadows stretched across the field. I think I hated you for leaving, I finally said. I know. But I never stopped loving you. She looked at me, eyes wet. That's the hardest part, isn't it? Yeah. We didn't kiss. We didn't make promises. We just sat, older, bruised, and more honest than we'd ever been, and that, somehow, felt like the start of something real. The next morning, I packed a bag, not for Rebecca, for Callie. That I booked a flight to Raleigh. That I didn't know what I was hoping to find, but I knew if I didn't go, I'd regret it. Before I left, I stopped by the cemetery. My mother's grave was simple. Clean. White stone. No angel statues. No etched roses, just her name and the dates. That I knelt beside it and placed a hand on the cool grass. Thanks, I whispered. For telling me the truth. Even if it was late. I stayed there for a while, listening to the wind in the trees. Then I got up, walked back to the truck, and drove towards something new. The Raleigh airport was hot and crowded when I landed. I hadn't flown in years. The last time had been for a high school wrestling tournament in Chicago. Before everything in my life got too heavy to carry through TSA, Callie was waiting outside, leaning against a navy blue Subaru. She wore jeans, a white blouse, and had her hair tied back in a messy knot. She didn't look nervous. That I, on the other hand, felt like I might throw up. She waved when she saw me. Hey, she said, as I reached her. You made it. Yeah. We stood there, awkward for a second. Then she said, can I hug you? I nodded. That it wasn't a long hug, or a dramatic one. Just two people trying to close 28 years of distance. When we pulled back, she gave me a look, eyes scanning mine. You've got Dad's eyebrows. You have his jaw, I replied without thinking. She smiled. Weird, right? Extremely. We didn't go anywhere fancy. Just a quiet cafe a few blocks from her place. She ordered iced coffee with oat milk. I got black coffee and a cinnamon bun. I didn't end up eating. That we talked about her job, her apartment, the weird neighbors with 4 cats and no curtains. She asked me about carpentry, about the lake, about whether I still went fishing in the mornings. Eventually, we ended up at her apartment, a cozy 3rd-floor walk-up with creaky stairs and books stacked in every corner. Sorry it's a mess, she said, kicking off her shoes. It's not, I replied, and meant it. It felt like her. Warm, scattered, lived in. She pointed to the couch. You can crash there. You sure? She raised an eyebrow. Would I invite my long-lost half-brother to visit just to make him sleep in a motel? Fair enough. That night, after we'd watched half of When Harry Met Sally and split a pizza, she disappeared into her bedroom and came back holding a small wooden box. I've only opened this once, she said. A few days after he died. I couldn't handle it then. She handed it to me. My hands felt clumsy. Inside were a few items, a rusted Zippo lighter, a dog tag from his army days, a crumpled photo of him holding a baby, I guessed, and an envelope. Unsealed. My name on the front. Jake. That I stared at it like it might explode. You don't have to read it, Callie said softly. But I thought you should have it. I didn't answer. That I just took the letter out and unfolded it. Jake, if you're reading this, it means I never got the guts to say any of this out loud. That's on me. That I wasn't a good father. Probably wasn't even a decent one. I left too much unsaid and too many things undone. But I did love you. I just didn't know how to show it. That I had 2 kids, and I failed both of you in different ways. I see that now. Regret's a hell of a thing. It doesn't show up until it's too late to do anything about it. You were always better than me. Stronger. Kinder. I see that now, too. I hope you never let your anger turn you into a version of me. Take care of Callie if she lets you. She deserved better from me. You both did, Dad. My throat burned. I wanted to be mad at the letter, at the weakness, the cowardice of it, but all I felt was tired. Callie didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She just sat beside me on the couch, legs tucked under her, and handed me a tissue from a box that said, "Be kind to yourself," on the side. That I stayed up late that night, long after she went to bed, reading the letter again, and again, and again, until I finally folded it, slipped it back into the envelope, and placed it beside my wallet. The next morning, we went to the park. It wasn't much, just some walking trails and a pond with ducks, but it was peaceful. Do you think he meant it? I asked. I think it was probably the only truth he ever gave us, Callie said. And even then, it came late. We sat on a bench, watching an old man toss breadcrumbs at the water. "You think we're broken?" I asked. She smiled, faintly. "No. I think we're in the middle of fixing." I got back to Maple Falls 2 days later, same town. Same streets. Same faded gas station sign with one light bulb always flickering. But something in me felt different. Like I'd been unplugged from the anger I'd carried for so long that I didn't tell anyone I was coming back. I just drove through town at dusk, my elbow out the window, music low, eyes scanning familiar porches and forgotten mailboxes. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light was on. Rebecca was sitting on the steps, her knees pulled up to her chest, hoodie sleeves over her hands. She looked up like she'd known I was coming back that day. "You look tired," she said. "Airports will do that to you." She stood. "You want to come in?" "I think I need to." She made coffee, even though it was almost 8 p.m. We sat in her kitchen, across from each other, 2 mugs between us and the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. That I told her about Callie. About the letter. About how strange it felt to finally see someone who shared my blood and not feel anger. She listened, nodding now and then, eyes soft. "My mom's not doing well," she said suddenly, as I was mid-sentence. That I stopped. "She has Parkinson's. It's getting worse. Becca, she's still at home, but for how long, I don't know. Some days are better than others. Some days she forgets where the bathroom is. Or calls me Lily, which is her sister's name." She stared at the table like it might offer a solution. "I've been thinking about selling the house and moving her in with me. But I don't know if I'm strong enough for that." "You are," I said quietly. She gave me a tired smile. "Yeah. You sure? I've seen you carry more than most people ever do. You just never let anyone see how heavy it is." She blinked fast, looking down. "I wish we'd had this version of each other years ago," she whispered. "Maybe we wouldn't have appreciated it," I said. "Maybe we needed to fall apart to come back right." I walked her home that night, even though it was just next door. She stood on her porch, arms folded tight. "Jake," she said softly. "What are we doing?" I looked at her, and for once, I didn't run from the question. "We're being honest," I replied. She gave me a long look. Then nodded. "No more disappearing acts," she asked. "No more silence." She leaned in, slow, this time. I kissed her first. The next morning, I stopped by the lake. The fog was low and thick, the way it gets in early fall. I sat on the dock with my boots hanging over the edge and opened the letter my mom had left me. That I hadn't read it since the day after her funeral. "Jake, if you're reading this, you've already figured out most of the puzzle. Or maybe just enough to finally stop chasing ghosts. That I loved your father once. And I hated him, too. Both can be true. But the best thing he ever gave me was you. That I tried my best. It wasn't always enough. But I hope you know you were always loved. That if you find your sister, and I hope you do, be gentle with her. You'll find pieces of yourself in her that you didn't even know were missing. And Jake, forgive yourself. It's the only way any of this gets better. Love always." Mom. I folded the letter and watched the fog swirl across the water like breath on glass. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running from something. That I felt like I was coming home. The thing about starting over is that it doesn't happen all at once. That it's not one big conversation or one perfect kiss. It's dishes washed side by side, bad days endured together, slow forgiveness over morning coffee. It's seeing the worst in each other and choosing to stay anyway. Rebecca and I didn't define anything right away. That we still lived in our own houses, still had our routines. But suddenly, I was helping with her mom's prescriptions, and she was bringing me over chicken soup on nights I worked late. That IT was quiet. Simple. But it felt more real than anything I'd had before. A week later, Callie came to Maple Falls, she texted me the morning she left Raleigh, on the road. Bring good coffee. That I picked her up at the bus station with 2 cups from Main Street Grind and a paper bag full of bagels. She looked around at the town like she was stepping into an old movie. This place is small, she said, laughing. Yup. Like, really small. You'll get used to it. We drove to the lake. It was mid-October by then. The leaves were loud and orange, the air crisp enough to bite your lungs. Callie stood on the dock and stared out. I can see why Mom loved this place, she said. That I nodded. She would have liked you, I said. I hope so. We spent the afternoon walking Main Street. I showed her the hardware store, the diner, the old movie theater that only played 1 film a week. She took pictures of everything like she was documenting a foreign country. That night, I introduced her to Rebecca. They sat on the couch, trading stories, while I grilled chicken out back and tried not to eavesdrop. That I heard Callie say, "He's quieter than I expected." Rebecca replied, "He talks plenty when it matters." Later, Rebecca asked me, "You two talk about staying in touch long term?" "Yeah. She's not going anywhere." "Good," she said. "You deserve some family." A few days later, Callie and I visited Dad's old house. That it was still boarded up. Empty. But we sat on the front steps with coffee and talked. "You think he ever really lived here?" she asked. "I think he tried. I wish he'd tried harder." "Me too." She leaned her head on my shoulder. It felt like something healing. That night, Rebecca and I sat on my porch, a blanket across both our laps. She said, "If I asked you to come with me, to visit my mom's sister in Oregon for a bit, would you?" I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because for the first time in years, Maple Falls didn't feel like a cage. It felt like mine. "Yeah," I said. "If you're going, I'll go." Rebecca left for Oregon 2 weeks later. Her mom had taken another fall. It wasn't serious, but it was enough to make the future more urgent. We packed her car the night before, box of books, 2 suitcases, her dog-eared journal, and stood in the driveway longer than we needed to. "I don't want to leave you here," she said. "You're not." She blinked. "I'm coming in a month," I said. "Just need to close a few things here." She smiled, but it trembled a little. "You mean that?" "I wouldn't say it if I didn't." We kissed like people who've learned what it means to wait, what it means to lose and still believe in return. She got in the car and drove away at sunrise. I stayed behind for Callie. She moved into a small apartment 2 blocks off Main Street and enrolled in a few online college classes. We saw each other every day. Sometimes I made her dinner. Sometimes she made me playlists. Always, we talked like we were building something new. "I don't know what I'm doing," she told me once. "Neither do I. But I'm glad I found you." "Me too." The night before I left town, I walked down to the lake. It was colder now, November wind pushing at the surface, the dock slick with frost. I stood there a long time, breathing slow, the silence wrapping around me like a goodbye and a beginning at once. That I said thanks. To the water. To the ghosts. To the pain that didn't win. Then I turned around and walked back home. The next morning, I packed the truck. Callie hugged me tight. "You're really going?" "Yeah." She pressed a note into my hand. "Open it later," she said. The road out of Maple Falls looked different this time, not because the trees had changed, or the gas station was finally closed for good, but because I wasn't running. That I wasn't chasing answers or escaping silence. That I was going towards something. Oregon was cold and wet and beautiful. Rebecca cried when she saw me on the porch. That we didn't make big speeches. Didn't need to. That night, we sat on the floor of her aunt's living room, 2 mugs of tea, a sleeping dog at our feet. "I still don't know what this is," she said, nodding between us. "Whatever it is," I said, "I want it. Even with the hard parts. Especially with the hard parts." She leaned in. I rested my forehead against hers. Outside, it rained steady on the roof. Inside, it was warm, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had just enough light to see the next step. That was enough.